side. He's been a staff writer at The New Yorker since 1944. He became a fiction editor in 1956 and is the author of 9 books. He's best known and perhaps best loved for his writings on baseball and other sports, but he's covered a wide range of other topics and genres, including film reviews, stories, light verse, and casual pieces. His writing has appeared in many anthologies, including Best American Sports Writing, Best American Short Stories, Best American Essays, and the Best American Magazine Writing. Among his many awards, he was the inaugural winner of the ESPN Lifetime Achievement Award for literary sports writing. In 2014, Mr. Angell received the J.G. Taylor Spink Award, the highest honor given to writers by the Baseball Hall of Fame. This year, he won the National Magazine Award for essays and criticism for his piece, This Old Man. In that delightful piece, one sentence caught my eye that seemed to capture the positive outlook and infectious pleasure of his writing. He wrote, "The majority of us people over 75 keep surprising ourselves with happiness. Roger Angell has not only accomplished that for himself, but he has done the same for all his readers, regardless of their age." Mark Singer has been a staff writer at The New Yorker since 1974. That's 2 years after he graduated from Yale College, where, among other distinctions, or perhaps I should say burdens, he was one of my roommates. And it's been an enormous pleasure to have Mark as such a good friend for so many years. As a New Yorker, he has contributed hundreds of Talk of the Town stories, sports profiles, and important pieces. In 1985, he wrote a book called Funny Money about the collapse of the Penn Square Bank in his native state of Oklahoma that is still widely regarded as one of the very best pieces of financial reporting. As with so much of his writing, it brought together rigorous investigation with insight and humor about human endeavors, accomplishments, and failures. Mark has written several other books, including collections of pieces and profiles that originally appeared in The New Yorker. He's steeped in the history and lore of that great institution and the brilliance and quirks of its great writers and editors, from the enigmatic Mr. Shawn to such colleagues, mentors, and close friends of his as Calvin Trillin, Bill Zinser, and Roger Angell. We're privileged to share in the conversation this evening between Mark Singer and Roger Angell. And before I hand over the microphone to Mark and Mr. Angell, I'd like to put in a plug for the library. As you all know, we rely on the support of our members. Our annual membership fees are really a small part of our overall budget, so I encourage you all to think of the library and give generously. Mark, Roger?
Thank you, Charlie. You have scooped almost entirely my introduction to Roger. He's grateful to me. I can lay it on some more. Well, the one thing that I consider one of Roger's great accomplishments was when he was inducted into the Baseball Hall of Fame last summer. Maureen Dower wrote a piece about his fiancée. He mentioned his fiancée, Peggy Morgan, who was here sitting next to Charlie.
called This Old Man, Roger Angell, All in Pieces.
So we have a plan that's already in evidence. Our conversation is going to be basically centered around a series of photographs. And the first one is, you've been looking at it for a while. It's on the screen. This photograph accompanied a blog that Roger published in the New Yorker, I think last spring. I mean, a year ago last spring, and he will read to you the text that accompanied it.
This, by the way, is not very clear because it's based on a tiny and treasured family photograph that hangs in my bar in New York on 90th Street. The ballpark in this treasured spring baseball photograph is a stretch of meadow or rough lawn in Bedford, New York, an Upper Westchester exurb where my mother and stepfather found a modest spring and summer rental in the first years of their marriage. Judging by the post-blossoming young apple tree just down the third baseline, this opening day fell on the mid-spring Sunday in, let's say, 1931. Since the photo is undated, I based its time on the size of the pitcher, who is me, at 10 and a half. The batter is my mother, Catherine White, and the tweedy, cautious catcher is my 79-year-old grandfather, Charles Spencer Surgeon, a retired executive of the Boston Elevated Railway. Not a great athlete, perhaps, but a man with a strong conceptual awareness of politics. I can't take my eyes off my mother. Her uniform, which appears a tad formal, is a well-cut suit, skirt, and a silk blouse, both in keeping with the Sunday outing styles of that day. Despite a certain weariness in her gaze and upper body, her stance is excellent. Her weight mostly over the slightly flexed back leg, her front foot stepping boldly forward in preparation for the swing, which will initially take the bat up and back, then swiftly down into the reversing pivot and full body turn that precede and accompany her speaker-esque. I have to explain speaker-esque, that's the name for Tris Speaker, a great ball player of her earlier time, a great Red Sox star. Her speaker-esque closed stance cut at the hole. My pitching form is okay too. Yes, I look more like a center fielder trying to cut down a speeding base runner at third base or home. But give me a break. By the size of me, I go about 82 pounds here, and the angle of my arm shows an instinctive understanding of the physics of the flank. Only the greatest athletes have this somewhere within them, an elegant je ne sais quoi that informs the Mathesons and Mazes of each era and warms the heart even of the eyeless, most distant onlooker. The photographer, who is my stepfather, E.B. White, had snapped the softball in first flight, only a blurry yard or two out of my grasp. And this good fortune, taken with a tilt in my follow-through, allows us to supply the invisible arc of the sphere, a combined heater and change-up, parallel the lower profile of the apple tree and descending across the plate, hem high. A pitch taken by my mother for a called by me, strike one. Way to go, kid.
So we could talk. We could spend how much time do we have? I meant to ask that. How long are we here for? Someone knows the answer.
About 9 minutes.
5 more minutes?
baseball field is a mystery to anybody in the stands. Every moment is clear. Every other sport has things that happen you didn't quite see and can't understand, but everything in baseball is highly visible. And baseball looks easy, and it's a series of repeated motions. The pitcher pitches again and again and again, and everything that happens is more or less unsurprising until something happens that are totally surprising. And everybody does the same thing. The pitchers pitch, the catchers catch, the batters bat, and it's the same motions again and again, but each one is different from the other. No pitcher pitches like any other pitcher. And there's time enough, if you're paying attention, to see what the pitcher is actually doing, where his weight goes, how he moves, how he is attacking the batter, and the same for batters. I mean, every batter I can look back in my mind, because I wrote about them, I can exactly see in my mind's eye about 20 different batters of the past and their stances. And I think bringing this back is part of the pleasure of writing about baseball and maybe reading about baseball. The notion that if you can get those little things right, what Derek Jeter does when he drops, it brings up his left elbow and the bat comes through like this. If you can get that right, the reader, you're with the reader, which is what a writer wants to do, is to keep the reader close, keep the reader engaged. And if I can do that, and the reader thinks, yes, I'm there, he's with me, I'm with him, then you're doing okay.
Well, I can understand that just from as a reporting exercise, observing something and taking notes. But what you've done so consistently is treated every single, you refer to this, every single pitcher's motion, every batter's style as if it's a fingerprint, as something as distinctive as a signature. And I wonder, you have a reference to Tris Speaker. I assume that you really do see Tris Speaker.
I never saw Tris Speaker. He did before.
But in your mind,
my mother saw Tris Speaker.
Okay. So I'm
old. I'm not that old.
So she described Tris Speaker to you at some point in your life.
No, I don't think so. But the funny thing about baseball, sometimes we talk about this at a point in our discourse, but let's wait until Smoky Joe Wood comes up.
Okay, all right. We're going to move to the next image if I can do that. Here we go. All right. So tell us what this is. If you can crane your neck.
That is a photograph of me taken in Fenway Park in, I think, 1988, something like that, by a photographer named John Weiss. And what I like about it is it tells more or less everything about me. That's me. My head isn't there, but my name is on my credential. I'm carrying my notebook. My pen is in my hand. You can tell what time it is if you turn your head around. It's 6:15 in the evening, just before the game at Fenway Park. And you can actually read my notes. And written in that notebook is the words Ken Coleman. Ken Coleman was one of the announcers for the Red Sox. And I needed to talk to him about something. I didn't remember what it was. The funny thing about the photograph is that when I say the crotch shot of the guy in the jeans, right behind me, that is my close friend Chip McGrath, former colleague at the New Yorker, former editor of the New York Times Book Review, a great Red Sox fan who was there that day. And I hadn't even seen him yet, but he later looked at this photograph and said, "That's me. That's me."
Everybody should recognize his own crotch. But what that really does tell is a lot about.
We're going to talk about the notebook.
That's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm leading up to. The notebook. Exactly. I've received notes from you over the years, sometimes pointing out something that I could do better, sometimes encouragement. But you have a very distinctive handwriting, and I can, in my mind, I see you taking notes. Now, are you a compulsive note taker, or how do
you see is the Meade College two-subject notebook, which is the great sports, really great reporters notebook. The reason I say that is that David Remnick, my boss, and a great writer, has used nothing else. We can't get these. These are going out. We can't get them anymore. And Remnick and I mourn the Meade two-subject notebook. Talk about it constantly. He used these all over Russia when he's winning Pulitzer Prize as a correspondent for the Times. But the reason I take notes is that my writing in baseball has been sort of long pieces at different times in the season, and almost always was a late season wrap up of the season itself with highlights, and then the World Series, whatever. But I never knew at a game when I might want something that was happening at the time, so I wrote everything down. And when I was first starting to do this, and was hanging around the Red Sox and the old Red Sox Fenway Park old press box. One of the deacons or deans of the press box then was an old Bostonian named Cliff Keene of the Globe. And he watched me taking note after note, filling up pages and pages of notes, and he'd say, "How many takes today, Raj? How many takes today?" A take is old newspaper parlance because after you wrote something out of your typewriter, you would hand it, and Western Union, not Western, the telegraph service would have a guy there who would hand it to a telegrapher who would send it to the newspaper by telegraph. So a sheet of paper was a tape. How many takes today, Roger?
So they were, basically, he was enormously resentful that you...
No, he wasn't. He was interested and amused. But what happened was I was terrified of these guys when I didn't start writing baseball until I was in my middle 30s. And I knew a little bit, I was a fan, and I knew a little bit about the game, but I'd never been inside. And I think wherever I went, the beat writers, who were not as numerous as they are now, but the guys who've been around for a long time, watched me, and then admitted me. They took me up. They filled me in. I was sort of dropped in. I was not a regular writer over a long stretch. I'd come by for a few games or for some story I was working on. And without fail, these people filled me in and did my job for me, including Cliff King.
So, when you're not a daily beat writer, first of all, I've always thought that that's a really difficult job because you're with a club. You have to have access, and you sense any number of times, I'm sure, over the course of the season, when you can blow up every bridge.
It's harder. Excuse me, Mark. It's harder than ever now because everyone knows what happened to the ball game. Everybody knows. Every fan knows. You've seen it. You've seen it in home, and you've seen it repeated over and over. You've seen replays. So the reporting has gone on to baseball writing. It's all feature writing. Much more difficult.
Interesting. Well, in any event, you go, whether it was for spring training or a mid-season piece or during the playoffs, whether you sometimes were watching it on TV, sometimes you're watching it in the stands, sometimes you're watching it in the press box, but you then have to talk to these ball players, and that's hard. Especially nowadays when everybody is so guarded, when there's so many gotcha moments that happen. So what were the guys that you really had to work on to get?
Well, I made all the mistakes. I made the worst mistake, and this brings up a great tip for reporters that we'll now share with you, which was first enunciated by the good John McPhee. When you're talking to an interviewee, you can't be conversational. You're interviewing somebody, you want them to talk to you, and you can't go like this. You can't nod if somebody's talking to you, which is what I did. I remember I was embarrassed the first couple of years. I finally brought myself courage to talk to a couple of ball players. And the ball player would say about 2 sentences, and I would go like this, meaning that I understood. And he would stop talking. Not what I was after. So McPhee says, the way to interview somebody, you ask him a question, he says something, and you go, what? Huh? And you want to give the idea that you're really quite stupid, and you don't get things. And then they want to help you out, and they start to talk. And this is against every instinct because we all nod and we cut each other off because we get the point. But you don't do that. You just sit back and they're writing while they're talking.
No, my way of expressing that has always been, there's nothing better if you're a reporter than being underestimated by the person that you.
Yeah.
Once they think you're an idiot or they have something.
That may be true for you.
It's natural for me. It didn't work out. It's useful nevertheless. And if we did that thing, and I have to do it now because I am going deaf, you know, where you really get them to repeat stuff. You're slowing it down and you want to catch them, so all those things are very.
I don't think this kind of interviewing goes on anymore. I really don't. It's so tough. I don't talk to ball players anymore because once you get to the age when they call you sir, it's a big problem. Not the same. But everybody talks all the time now. Everybody is online all the time, or Twittering, or texting, and including ball players. And the idea that if you were going to talk to them, they're going to tell you something about themselves that you didn't know before, about the game they didn't know before, it's quite unlikely. And they said, "Oh, I already talked about that," or "You know how it happens." And reporters are not held in very high respect anymore because they're not electronic.
But you know, you weren't always talking. I mean, you did pieces about scouts. You would get letters from readers. You did a great piece once all over the country. You want to talk about what that? That's really about the quid pro quo that exists between.
Yeah. That was a piece I wrote in 1981, and it came about because I've been getting letters over a period of months from a young woman who lived in Vermont, a poet, named Linda Kittle, who was living with and later married a semi-pro pitcher named Ron Goebel. And she wrote me fascinating long letters about life at the lowest levels of baseball, not in any organized leagues. Semi-pro ball is played, and it's all supported by local enterprise, or back then, and the players would have uniforms that looked like regular baseball uniforms, but on the back would have the name of the local hardware store, or liquor store, or grain and feed merchant that was paying for that uniform. But Linda took the game seriously and invited me to come up and join them in Vermont, and I went up and spent a week with them. I've never had a better time in my life. And they took baseball seriously, and I took them seriously. And it was so moving to go back. There was a baseball strike going on that summer, and here was baseball sort of. You felt this is what country ball once felt like. I remember driving with Ron and Linda one day going to a game, and he got outside the front gate of the little unassuming tiny ballpark, and he got a little folding triangular sign out of the back of his car that said "Baseball Today" and put it on the road.
This is the starting pitcher pulling out the
yeah.
sign.
The starting pitcher had a sign that said "Baseball Today" and put it out on the road. And another time I was standing with Linda, and she was selling tickets out of a roll of tickets in the evening, a beautiful evening in Burlington, Vermont, outside that great ballpark, University of Vermont ballpark, beautiful place. And we were standing there, she had some change, and cars were rolling in, and she was selling these low-priced tickets. And then a car goes in, and she says, "Hi," and waves him by. And I look at the license plate, and it says,
And she was the one who, I think, really concisely described that relationship that exists between writers and subjects. She said, "We gave you our lives."
Yeah,
right?
yes.
And you felt that always.
She said, "We've given you our lives." She told me everything about their lives, and everything about Ron's pitching and herself. And I was very moved by this, but it's my experience that if you're serious about your work, and if people think that you were paying attention, they want to give you their lives. They like to say we all like to give our lives. We take ourselves seriously, and if somebody is there who really wants to listen, tell some part of your life, it happens. It's a great responsibility, and Janet Malcolm has written about this in that famous first line of a piece about, what's it, about Sacramento, you don't remember taking that? Which one did? But she basically said that no writers are to be trusted, that we're all taking advantage of our subjects, and which is true, but in a way because we are taking what we want from a life. But I think the connection is understood, and you want to get to a point where you are trusted. People suddenly want to talk, and as a reporter, you want to get hold of talkers. You want to get people who will talk. And in my baseball beat, my baseball writings over a number of years, I began to recognize the great talkers. And somebody used to say there are a lifetime 300 talkers, like a lifetime 300 pitchers. And Ted Williams, Ted Simmons, Linda Kittle, Bill Rigney, Roger Craig, the inventor of the split finger fastball, a few dozen of them, and my writings are full of those same people because they talked to me and they were talking paragraphs. And there was, I think we talked about this before, there was one player I was trying to get who would not talk to me, who was Ted Simmons. Ted Simmons was a catcher with the Cardinals and the Angels and some other teams. An extremely intelligent, interesting guy who on the side collected American furniture to the point where the St. Louis Art Museum began to buy some of his furniture. I'm trying to get Ted Simmons to talk to me, and he's not talking to me. And at some point I mentioned American furniture, and he says, "Hold it right there, Roger." He said, "I don't know if you know anything about American furniture or not. And maybe if you do, we could have an interesting conversation." And besides, my insurance agent had told me not to talk about furniture anymore. But anyway, I couldn't get him, and then finally, after months of trying off and on, in spring training in Sun City, Arizona one day, he played in a game, he was a catcher, and he left the game in the fourth or fifth inning and was in the locker room. And I went out to right field into the locker room, just the two of us there, and sitting in, again, I was hopeless, it was a silence, he wasn't really saying much. And so I offered a question. I said, "Ted, you're a switch hitter. You got left-handed and right-handed. And I know you're right-handed because you're a catcher. All the catchers are right-handed. But you're a much better hitter as a left-handed than a right-hander. Why is that?" And he said, "Why do you think? What do you think?" And I said, "Well, it occurs to me that you throw the ball back to the pitcher over and over and over again, so maybe your right hand is too, your right arm is too, your top hand is too strong." And he looked at me and he said, "I didn't think you would have noticed that." And then he was mine. I couldn't shut it up. He was up along. I suddenly stepped over some invisible threshold, and we went on from there.
Okay, we're going to go to the next image. Can you see that?
Yes.
Okay, talk about that.
This is a drawing that Saul Steinberg did for one of my pieces. I have the full drawing at home. It's in color, and I love it. It's I don't know if you guys are Steinberg fans, but just look that over. This is a Milwaukee Braves pitcher, Saul Steinberg, a miniature, not very tall, Romanian artist, came to this country and loved baseball instantly and became a passionate fan of the old Milwaukee Braves. This is the Milwaukee Braves pitcher. But I love the tiny outfielder because that's where we see outfielders from the stands. They're tiny and way back there. I love the detail, the little bag, rosin bag, in other words, it says rosin. Salt of what?
Okay, he used to watch Charlie Mary.
Oh,
grew up
I'm sorry.
in the building where Saul Steinberg was his neighbor.
Yeah.
But he didn't know what was going on, which you did. What was going on?
So Saul actually acquired a full Milwaukee uniform, a regular uniform, and he used to put it on when he was watching Braves games. I have a photograph of him, this tiny Romanian artist with horn-rimmed glasses wearing full regalia with a hatchet and all that stuff. Something that belongs in Annals of American Art somewhere.
Okay, next.
Saul was a great talker in his own right. He would turn up at parties and talk, and nobody, he'd be talking paragraphs and nobody interrupted him. And he would say things, I once heard him say this. I can do this. I am on the accent. He once asked me about some managers of a team, and he said, Tom Lasorda, the typical Neapolitan gangster. What is a Billy Martin? And I talked about Billy Martin, and I said that his grandfather had been Portuguese. And he said Portuguese. He understood the whole thing in European terms. But Saul once said in a conversation, he said, there have never been any great artists who were tall. No great artists have been tall. And it sends your mind racing. How tall was Delacroix? Could Titian slam dunk? But you were not allowed to interrupt.
Next image, come on. This is an amazing photograph.
We won't let you go on. This is a weird photograph. It's taken of me at some point for an article in People magazine. And the photographer stationed me in the middle of Shea State, and the Mets were away out in the outfield, and the typewriter. And what I'm thinking while I'm posing for this is the planes are taking off for LaGuardia. They're just a few hundred feet overhead. People looking out the window, and there's a guy sitting in the middle of the outfield with a typewriter. And the other interpretation of the picture is that this is the height of the festivities of the Roger Angell Appreciation Day that's taking
Okay, I know who the guy is on the right, and I think many people here might recognize the guy on the left.
That's a year and a half ago at the baseball players' dinner. And since I was invited because I was going to be inducted as a writer's closet or corner at Cooperstown. And that's Sandy Koufax, who was the oldest player when the celebration came along last July. By order of election, he'd been elected to those 55 immortals came back, and he was the earliest one who had been admitted. And an old friend of mine is still in wonderful shape.
Last summer.
Last summer, yes, he was there. And I always wanted to get hold of Sandy and do a long piece about him because he was so interesting. And he's one of the great pitchers of the past who would still be a great pitcher today. And let's talk about that a little bit. We all sentiment. We're going to move on, by the way. It's not going to go baseball here, so stop fidgeting. I think we all sentimentalize the old players, the famous players of the past, and think that they're the greatest ever. And some of them are. I think Sandy would be a great pitcher in any era. Maybe Bob Gibson. Not all of them. But we don't understand about players of today, and even fans who go to the ballpark don't really realize this unless you've got to stand next to a contemporary ball player, just even an everyday ball player, to see what's happened. These athletes are enormous. They are a different species. Derek Jeter, if you stand next to him, stand next to A-Rod, a giant of a man, beautifully proportioned. They're much bigger and much stronger and much faster than they ever were. It's true of all sports. And they no longer, so the illusion that was once prevalent in baseball for kids and young men that with a little luck, I could grow up to be this, or I could have been this with a little luck, because they were about our size, but no more, not the same. I remember at some point, I think in the 80s, I was in spring training. I was sitting in the office of Sparky Anderson, then managing the Tigers, and there's a huge portrait of Ty Cobb, one of the great all-time figures in the history of baseball. huge picture of Tiger Cowboy, played for the Tigers in a big cardigan sweater with a huge D over it. There he is. And I asked Sparky, I said, where does this guy fit into your lineup? And he took the pipe out of his mouth and leaned forward and lowered his breath, and he said, he's not starting for me. I hope he makes the 25-man roster. Not the same. So listen,
that is, well, you know, we're gonna shift in a little bit from baseball to writing and editing, and so maybe we'll get to it then. But I want to at least broach this subject. You talk about a lifetime 300 talker or a lifetime 300 hitter. If you're a lifetime 300 hitter, you have an excellent shot of getting into the Baseball Hall of Fame. So what that means is you have a failure rate of 70%.
yeah,
And this is, you've talked about this again and again.
difficult.
It's a really hard game. Everything about it is hard.
By far the hardest sport to play. It's just by far the hardest.
And we, in the armchair, fans here, we're so quick to jump on these guys.
Yeah.
When they strike out.
Baseball looks so easy. It looks so, I could do that. It looks so easy. They make it look easy. But you take a great asset and put it on a baseball field. If he's never played before, he is lost. Completely lost.
Yeah.
Michael Jordan, the greatest basketball player of all time, perhaps, decided really with amazing gallant thing to do. He wanted to try professional baseball. And he gave it a real shot. And he got as high as AAA, playing for Birmingham, I think. And he couldn't hit. He just couldn't get it. Later, last year, I talked to his manager then and said he couldn't hit at all. He just couldn't hit.
It makes me feel better about my Little League career being 5 years and 4 hits. Just one bad year there. So Roger, this is Cooperstown. That is you at the podium, and it's hard to see, so I'm going to interpret this a little bit. Far right there is Frank Thomas in the front row, and then
The only one that's not paying attention.
Frank Thomas is around here, and then next to him is Tom Glavine or Greg Maddox, I think, and then Tony La Russa.
Those are 3 great managers and 3 great players.
And then the far end is Bobby Cox, and then there's Glavine. But Joe Torre is out of the frame here, and he was also inducted.
Well, in my speech at Cooperstown, I talked about Joe Torre. He was my favorite manager, and when he arrived, I've known him for a long time. I knew him when he was a player, and I knew him when he was coaching, managing the Mets, and he had not had a very successful record until he arrived with the Yankees in the mid-90s. But the thing about Joe Torre is that the players really wanted to play for him. He never threw a player under the bus in interviews, so no matter how bad someone was going. His standard answer, if somebody, a pitcher was struggling or a batter was struggling, he would say, well, Joey isn't proud of his at-bats, or something like this, or so-and-so is not happy about what's going on. And the insatiable mind, your family mind, would shift from the story of someone who was failing and struggling over to the player itself. He did that all the time, instinctively. And he had great success as a player. He was a catcher, and he's with the Cardinals, and was most valuable player in 1971. But the year he always talked about was the following year, when his batting average went down by 90 points. That's what he talked about when he talked to the players. And then he would bring up a day in 1975 when he became the first player in National League history to bat into 4 double plays in one game. And they loved him for this. They loved him for this. So I played with him. I would play for him any time to hear about it. I'm saying that in the speech. And you go ahead.
You talked about that in the speech, and I'm looking at Joe Torre while you're doing that, and he was sitting there going, nodding. He absolutely appreciated what the point you were making about.
Bob Gibson's in that photograph too. Do you see?
He's in the set. He's behind LaRusso.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
And he showed up for the.
Yeah, well, let me just talk about Bob Gibson a little bit, because what we don't understand is how fierce the nature of competition is in professional athletes. How they're driven by pride, not by money, but by pride. They want to do well. They want to compete. Bob Gibson was a handsome black man in 1968. Had the lowest earning average of anybody in modern history, 1.12 for the year. And in the World Series against the Tigers that year, in the opening game, he struck out 17 Tiger batters. I was there. And I talked to the batters afterwards, and they said I was awed. They didn't bluster, they said I was awed. And we gathered around Gibson's locker, and you got to remember what the year 1968 was like in this country, racially, and what was going on. And here is this dark-skinned man standing there, looking us over, and everybody's a little in awe of him. And someone says, "Bob, were you surprised by what you did today?" And he says, "I'm never surprised by anything I do." Imagine that. I went back through the crowd right. I said, "What did he say? What did he say?" And a little bit later, when the crowd thinned out a little bit, I offered some feeble, another question like that. I said, "Have you always been this competitive?" And Gibby looks at me and he says, "Oh, I think so." He said, "I played about 100 games of tic-tac-toe with my 6-year-old daughter, and she hasn't beat me yet." And he meant it. Extraordinary man. I did one spent a week with him a few years later when he was waiting to go into the Hall of Fame, and we became very close friends.
That was, he talked to you and I think one other sports writer then, and you came to be...
He was hard to get along. I was terrified doing this piece. I was really terrified. Joe Torre was managing the Mets then. And a great friend of Gibson's, a teammate of his, and I told him I was going to do this story, and he took me on the wall as a photograph of Bob Gibson and Tim McCarver, who was on the same team, smiling at the camera. And in between is Gibby, is Bob Gibson facing the other way, showing his back. And he said, "That's good."
Yeah, he was, I know that he wouldn't talk to me when he saw me with a pen and pad in my hand on the veranda at the Hotel Saga there when I was writing about that weekend. So then we're going to advance this to this image. Oops, if I can do it. Okay, here we go.
Okay.
Well, my recognize that, and tell us who it is.
That is John Upton, at the age of about 30, on the beach in Massachusetts. It was a beautiful, completing a beautiful barefoot swing. Picture taken by photographed by his son David. And John and I were intimately close as writer and editor of I edited all his fiction pieces for about 25 years. He had worked for William Maxwell, and then when Maxwell retired, I took over. And John died in 2011. I don't think the nerve has gotten over it yet. No way. He was our literary hero, our literary conscience. It's enormous output, 26 novels, I think, 126 stories for us, about 500 other pieces for the magazine, verses, casuals, pieces of critical writing. This great, I wrote something about him, which is in my book. Let me read it. Updike's writing is light and springy. The sentence is fresh painted. All his writing, critical or fictional or reportorial, I'm sure the light is difficult to
writing is light and springy. I couldn't read past that anyway.
He's a fabulous noticer and an expander. He has invented HD. So armed, he felt free from the start to take up and engage with all the labels within the range of his attention and put it down on paper. As a contributor, he was patient with editing and pertinaciously involved with his product, an editor's dream. My end of the work was to point out the occasional inconsistent or extraneous sentence or a passage that wanted something more. Almost under his breath, over our phone connection, while we looked at the same lines. You would try an alternative. Which one sounds better, do you think? Sighing, you would go back over the same few words again and again, then propose or listen to a switch of some sort and try again. All writers do this, but not many with such lavishly extended consideration. You wanted to see each galley, each tiny change, right down to the late closing page proofs, which you often managed to return by overnight mail an hour or so before closing, with new sentences or passages handwritten in the margins in soft pencil that were fresher and more inventive and revealing than what had been there before. You watched him write.
That's a fantastic description of something that is almost impossible.
Let's go on for just a minute, Mark. I want to talk about what it's like being a fiction editor and what the editor does. I think there's a great misconception out there about editors, certainly among beginning writers who see us as monsters who want to change their beautiful stuff. And what happens with a long-term relationship with a writer and an editor is an extraordinary intimacy which has to do with the difficulty of writing. Writing is the hardest thing in the world to do. It's just as hard as baseball. That's the affinity. That's my life plan. Why am I going to baseball and writing? Because they're both almost impossible to do well. It's really hard to write. Everybody knows this. Everybody wants to write. People who are talking say, now I can write. That happens all the time. I often thought, now that I've stopped writing, now I can be a civil engineer. But it is hard. The first writer I watched writing was my stepfather, my teens. I was up in Maine, and every Monday he would write the first page, the critical notes and comment editorial page from the New Yorker. And he'd close himself in his study, and you hear the hesitant sounds of his typewriter. And then he'd emerge at lunch, pale face, and wouldn't say anything much, and then he'd mail it off at 2 or 3 in the afternoon, and he'd say, "This is good enough." And then the magazine would appear late that week or the beginning of the next week, and of course it was good enough. It was beautiful, beautifully written. And he did that hardest thing of all, which is to make writing look easy, to make it the flow of V.B. White's writing you all know about, but it's been a model for me. Koufax writing, a lot of other people, but baseball writer Red Smith. But it's hard to come by. And he rewrote the first page of Charlotte's Web 13 times. And the annotated Charlotte's Web is probably here. It's fascinating. It's a great book. You can see what he did. Trying to get it right.
Was it the sound of his prose, or was it his work ethic that you think impressed you the most at that age?
I saw his work ethic around the farm that they had, where he was constantly working around the place. And Roy Blunt wrote a piece about him a few years ago that said he was sort of a dilettante, which was completely wrong. I mean, Andy was a highly talented farm handyman. And in one man's meeting, he wrote a whole piece one month about now I should, and that's all through all over and over and over again, all things that you needed to do on the farm. I sort of lost the thread.
Well, I'm going to talk. We have 5 minutes, you think? Or, okay, we got one more. Well, I want to talk about some of the other writers that you work with because Updike was obviously a very important.
I'll say one more thing about this. That this connection between a writer and an editor is extraordinary. It's very, very intimate because you are doing together this difficult and private thing, and the editor and the writer are trying to get the same result, which is to get something clear, something straightened out, so it gets something better and better and better than that over and over again. And if you do this again and again with a writer, sometimes a writer you never met. There's some of my writers I dealt with for 20 or 25 years or so, whom I never met, who lived in different parts of the world. Edith Hamilton, for instance.
Never met.
But these were close friendships. And in a few cases, something sad happens because when writers stop writing so well, or because we change or I change, you stop publishing them and not to publish them as often. And this is a betrayal, and it's very hard to keep a friendship up under those circumstances. Some of those friendships have stopped.
Some friendships ended.
Yeah, absolutely.
We don't need to get any names, but that.
No,
But
I understood it. It's heartbreaking, but I understood it.
You obviously, you're not. There were William Maxwell famously was an editor and a writer at the New Yorker.
He edited me, and I edited him.
That's interesting. That's fascinating.
Yeah.
And my question, I guess, is I think the editors I have known, I've been lucky, as you have, to work with great editors, and they are essentially egoless. The best editors, I find. Do you agree with that?
Well, it's not about you. It's about what's on the page.
Okay, so you're that's not about you. It's about the writer.
Yeah.
But then you're sitting here with your wooden boat cap, but you actually wore 2 caps all the time.
Well, that's right. That's right. I never felt that by starting up as a writer that I could make a living as a writer. I would be anxious all the time, and I wanted to work at something. And being an editor came naturally because my mother had been an editor, and I'd grown up watching her with galleys and erasing some pencils all around her and talking about Harold Ross over and over again. So it came naturally to me.
I want to ask you
it's different going back and forth, and that's, I think, a pleasure. Yeah.
a writer in particular, I want to ask you about is William Trevor. You edited him for...
Well, William Trevor was one of the great writers of our time, a British writer, a man of great reticence and enormous skill, and his writings have a stillness, there's a silence, there's a unbearably painful, quiet things happen in his stories. He required almost no editing whatsoever, but he relied on me. He said again and again, he relied on me. I would just read him, and once in a while I would offer a tiny suggestion, and he would say, and often not take it at all, but some reason, because I was reading him or taking him, I felt very intimately connected with him.
Were you doing that over
There are other writers. There are famous New Yorker writers, I'm not saying. Famous New Yorker writers who required editing. Every single sentence required something important. They're very rough, early draft writers. Other writers were pretty good, but the stories were so wildly scattered. Mary Robinson, I remember in the first drafts, you had no idea what was going on. I remember sitting on the phone or writing to her one, and I said, what are these 2 giant white horses doing here? And she said, I have no idea. I have no idea.
I never met these people, so I'd seen photographs of Trevor, and I read his work. Now, did you edit him over the phone only, or would you?
I was by mail, not by mail, basically back and forth. But he came here for a New Yorker festival, and I got a stretch limo for him. And he was very pleased about that.
One more that I want to ask you about is V.S. Pritchett, because I thought you and Gardner Box were both edited him, is that correct?
I don't think Gardner edited him, but he did a lot of critical writing for us. So I don't think it's Gardner, but Pritchett and I went back a ways. I edited him way back when I worked for Holiday Magazine in the 50s. He was writing travel pieces. And then I inherited him early on in my stint as a fiction writer. And all I can say is we became intimate friends. A wonderful man, middle class, never went to university. His father was somebody worked in the department store somewhere, and was famously unsuccessful. His autobiography, A Cab at the Door, is about the Pritchett family always having to leave and pull up stakes and move someplace else because they run out of money and they're really in a lot of debt. Victor became a reporter and a great literary figure. He's great by the time he died. He was the preeminent literary. He died around 2000. The preeminent literary man of his time.
Well, I'm going to give you a chance if you can read this. See if there's anybody in there you want to talk about. These are people you edited. If you could see it.
Well, Ruth Pravarjamala. Ruth lived in India, and I edited her for about 20 years before I met her. She was Polish, married to an Indian architect.
You edited both Woody Allen and Donald Barthelme.
Yeah, Donald was a close friend. Suddenly began writing those extraordinary, absolutely, totally unique Bartholomew-esque pieces that have more or less disappeared. And he wrote finished copy, amazing finished copy, and he used to say to me, "Well, I count on you to get the hay out. Get the hay out." And I did cut him once. I remember he wrote one of his stories, which was very much like a collage of stories. And this was, I've forgotten what the name was, the name of some female character. And in the middle of the story, he used the word butter over and over again. He had the word butter repeated in about four columns. It'd be about 24 butters. Butter, 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 and stacks and columns. And we were going to press, and we were a little squeezed, and I said, can I take out some of the butter? And he said, 4 butters, but not one more. I want to tell you about William Maxwell, who wrote about his hometown of Lincoln, Illinois, and about the death of his mother, who died when he was very young in the flu epidemic of 1919. An amazing man. I'm blanking out on something, sorry, excuse me. The Canadian short story writer just won the Nobel Prize.
Alice Munro.
Alice Munro told me that she used to like to go to visit the locales of famous writers on holiday. She went to Oxford, Mississippi to visit the Faulkner country. And she went to Lincoln, Illinois, and she felt she knew this town better than any other place she'd ever been. Because every bit of it was in Maxwell's writings.
Right.
One more name here I edited was Louis Armstrong. And I edited Louis Armstrong when I was back on holiday. And we got a travel piece. We heard that he'd been traveling in Europe with his wife for the first time in his life, not traveling with a band, just doing sightseeing, that he kept a diary. So we asked to get it, and I got to edit it, and it was exactly, I don't know how many of you were great fans of Louis Armstrong as I am, but it was exactly like listening to him play the trumpet. And I can remember one part of it when he had a visit with the Pope. He and Lucille were invited for a papal visit. And Louis writes, we're going to quote from memory, he said, the Pope asked, and I put in parentheses, serious, did we have any children? I said, tee. No, but we was having a lot of fun trying. Never saw a Pope laugh so much. And then the next sentence says, outside he has Swiss guards. Another sentence of his at the end of the paragraph, he wrote, we got back from their hotel in Rome, he said, and it's not so much like the trumpet notes of the beautiful way Louis plays the trumpet. Then we tipped on up those royal steps and knocked ourselves completely out with some sleep.